A year ago, we were talking about how the Pac-12 was stacked in women's basketball. Now those teams are making some serious waves in other conferences. We bounce on out to the West Coast today and dive right in, right here on Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. It is Monday, January 13th, 2025. Mother Nature has had a rough start to the new year, and so I hope wherever you are safe, and all of you and everywhere you call home is as well. Missy Heidrick, national correspondent here at The Next. Thank you for joining us. Your daily podcast. And your favorite one now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On NBA Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On NBA newsletter. And today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LockedOnNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, I must admit, it is still hard to adjust sometimes to seeing new conference patches on uniforms. As many of you know, I'm a Big 8, Big 12 gal, and so to see an SEC patch on an Oklahoma jersey, it feels strange. But the landscape of college athletics was shaken years ago, and so we sit here today in what we know as our new normal. West Coast schools bouncing all across the nation to play in the world of women's college basketball. Some of the best teams this season are tearing it up in new leagues. Today, with the help of my colleague, former Pac-12 guru and a Hall of Fame journalist, Michelle Smith, we are going to dive into all things West Coast basketball, UCLA, USC, North with Cal and Stanford, and anything else that we stumble across along the way. Michelle, Happy New Year to you, my friend. How are you? I know you're North, but please tell me that those that you know safe and sound and doing the best they can out in California.
Yeah, it's rough. It's a rough week in California, but I am up in the North, so we are safe and sound here, but thinking a lot about what's going on down south.
Yes, and I know it's not ending anytime soon, so everyone, fingers crossed, and those of you out there, again, please stay safe and take care of all of your family and friends. All right, let's start in that part of the country, because I think those that have had their eye on women's basketball this year said, you know what, there's going to be really good teams joining new leagues. And we've seen UCLA and USC go to the Big Ten. UCLA undefeated, number 1 in the nation, USC at number 4. Let's talk about the Bruins first. Corey Close has always been a fantastic tactician of this game. But I think the one thing that I think is maybe standing out and striking folks is not only how good of a coach she is on the floor, but the fact that she's done a really good job of assembling talent and putting together a group that just plays so hard and so well together. Your thoughts on what you've seen from the Bruins up to this point?
Well, obviously, based on their record and their ranking, they are a very good team. They're also just a very complete team, right? So, they have all of the pieces they need. They have Lauren Betts and Kiki, on the inside, and they have Kiki Rice, and they just have pieces. And they have folks that have been playing in that system for a while, and Kiki and London Jones and Angela Duglich, and they have all of the right pieces and parts. And for UCLA, there's always been, they've been such a good program over a sustained period of time, but there's been just sort of a ceiling that they keep butting up against. Even the teams that had Jordan Canada and Monique Billings, and that there was, they were knocking on this ceiling. And at least through this part of the season, they seem to have busted through that ceiling. And they've got great wins, and they're a great all around team. Corey has done a really good job with the transfer portal. Frankly, the coaches that have adapted really, really well to this new normal in all phases, right? Between NIL, transfer portal, and conference realignment. And that is a lot.
Yeah.
and it's going to send some of the old school coaches out sooner rather than later, I think. And we're starting to see that a little bit because it's hard. It's a different thing that you're doing than you used to do. But Corey has adapted incredibly well. She's brought in great transfers. She brought in bets. She's brought in those players from, she's brought in the players from Washington State and Oregon State. They're just, you have to adapt. And I would say as we transition over to SC, Lindsay has done that as well. So what's happened in Southern California is you have two coaches who are well equipped and well suited for this new world order in women's basketball, and their teams are benefiting. Their ability to, have great systems in which their teams will succeed, but their ability to roster build in this new universe, both of them have done a really good job of it. And obviously that's paying dividends. Now at USC, Juju is a homegrown, recruit, but and Rhea Marshall's been a really lovely player when they were in the pack for a long time, but being able to add pieces, being able to get Kiki Iriafen, and it's just, both of them have been really well suited to this new universe that we're in, and it's showing.
I want to go back and ask kind of more maybe a philosophical question, because I know you've had conversations with both of those coaches in LA, with Lindsay Gottlieb at USC and Corey Close at UCLA, about what this move to the Big Ten was going to be, and that there's a lot of unknowns. And I think all of these coaches, as they have ventured into these new leagues, you're doing it for the first time. You're still trying to figure it out. But the Big Ten has always been historically a very strong women's basketball conference. So it wasn't like two teams with a lot of juice behind them having success and building their programs and going, etc. We're headed into an average league. You're going somewhere where it's going to be pretty darn good competition night out. In those, as you look at what they've been able to do in making that transition, what stood out to you?
Well, I mean, both of them took it head on. And I think from the moment that we knew that SC and UCLA in particular were headed to the Big Ten, so they've had an on-ramp that's a little longer than Oregon and Washington, for example. They've had a full year. Their schools have had a full year to figure out their logistics around this. And still, yet I thought it was interesting that Lindsay said at one point a couple of weeks ago that these trips are longer than she thought they were going to be, the road trips, because there's 2 days between games. I mean, not everything in the past, but the Pac had one day they played, a Friday, Sunday schedule. This is a different schedule. And if you're leaving early to make sure your team is acclimating to the time zone or whatever, to get them their rest, to get them settled or whatever, all of a sudden short trips are turning into 5-6 day trips in the middle of the week. Right. But they've had time to on-ramp that rhythm or those logistics. The other thing that I think is a benefit, at least initially, and this isn't taking anything away from the talent and the skill of those players, is that this isn't a situation where you enter conference play and everybody knows you like the back of their hand, right? I mean, like, what people have, but you're going to learn. And the same goes for SC and UCLA, but to the degree that these teams have to learn them and they have to learn these teams. The advantage at this moment, I think, is for the newbies in terms of just not playing people they've played all the time. Every year, same coaches, same, right? Like same can lead to, teams that know you really well, who know how to scout you really well, lead to some, not the prettiest basketball games sometimes, but it also just creates a grind that maybe at least initially is not going to be, that they've got a little grace there in terms of everybody not knowing them. They don't have the book on them yet. They will, and everybody will settle into that routine. But, I'm looking at the standings right here, Washington's at 3-2, Oregon's at 3-3. Everybody that came from the Pac is representing themselves pretty well in a difficult conference right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This UCLA team, their game against Northwestern, that trip has been rescheduled. Northwestern has decided not to travel to the Los Angeles area because of what's going on with the fires. Penn State has traveled out there. They took on USC. We'll talk about the Trojans in a minute. That's what's next for UCLA. They also will take a brief respite from conference play and play Baylor out in New Jersey at the Coretta Scott King Classic a week from today on the 20th. I think that's an interesting challenge for UCLA. And again, one of those long trips that they're going to make out that direction. I think it's going to pose some interesting, it's a logistical scenario for them, but I think a great choice and a good non-conference matchup.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's, in this first year, I think that for the players, because this is new, there's a certain amount of energy around it and that they're not weary of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, all of those things, like I'll be really interested in 2 or 3 years to see how all of these things are playing out, these long trips, these, just this, teams knowing you better, it being, I don't want to say harder, but just being more grindy than it is now. Like, I'll be interested to see what it looks like a couple of years from now, because right now there's a lot of newness. And I think that still brings a lot of energy. So I think that players playing through some of these long trips and still having great energy and figuring out all of their rest and things, it's not routine yet. It's all brand new. And so I think that I think that the teams that are having to do a lot of this travel are they're going to bring some energy to it. I would be interested in, where we won't get into this today, but how the teams that have to go the opposite direction are reacting to it, because this takes them out of their routine. For USC and UCLA, and even for Stanford and Cal and the other school, like this is their new routine. But for these schools that are already established in these leagues, this is taking them out of their routine. And I'd be interested in how that plays out.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that we won't know much about probably for another year or two, but it will absolutely impact standings along the way. I think that is something to keep your eye on. Okay, when we come back, more with Michelle, I want to dive in and talk a little bit more about this USC team, because obviously they have got one of the very best players in the country on that roster. Well, I want to take a moment and introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about. Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. This is, if you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. The Ultimate College Basketball HD. You control every detail of your program, from recruiting players, hiring coaches, overseeing training camps, handling NIL. Congratulations to that. Managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up plays, set your strategy. You play the way it will affect your season. It will shape the future of your school's program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team where you want to go. Here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate/cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. And a message from our friends at Game Time. We all love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. Favorite memories are attending concerts, the energy, the excitement. All of that is unforgettable. Now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, you find amazing deals, and you can even see the view from the seat before you buy. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Well, it's game time. Hi, everybody. Missy Heidrick here with Michelle Smith. We are talking about what these teams out on the West Coast and the impact that they have had on women's basketball. We talked about the number one team in the country. When the AP poll comes out later this morning, Michelle, UCLA will still be number one. More than likely, USC is still going to be holding in that top 5. They are at number 4. They've won 11 in a row, now make it 12, because they won last night since that loss that they had to Notre Dame. And when you're carried by, I think ultimately is the best player in the nation, I think this just speaks to the strength. And as you were talking about earlier, this roster that Lindsay Gottlieb has put together, I think, gave a few more weapons and options around Juju Watkins this year. And I think you're seeing the benefit and the results of that with more balance along the way. Am I off my analogy?
No, I think you had to give, I mean, she's moved away from that 5th-year graduate. I mean, she had those first few years, which we had so many grad transfers where you have 1 year and, and last year they had, such great contributions from their grad transfers. And now she's moving to more of a consistent roster model because she's able to do that. And, and so it's creating the possibility of more consistency around Juju to support Juju as well. Obviously, bringing Kiki Iriafen in for 1 year is a huge bonus. And it being able to put somebody inside who's that dynamic and who runs the floor and moves the floor so well. And, but then there's the surprise of Kennedy Smith, this freshman who has come in and she's played 10 games, but she's just really had, she's had a great impact. And to have a freshman come in when this program has been so heavily reliant on upperclassmen over the last few years, and have, a young player come in and sort of be, maybe Juju's partner a little bit over this. I mean, these are things, and Rhea Marshall's an established veteran, and she does what she does so well. She plays hard, she rebounds hard. This is another team that has a lot of pieces and parts that make sense. And it brings some consistency, but obviously everything still points at Juju. And, when you're an opponent defensively, you point everything you've got at her and she'll still put up 25 on you. Right. So it's, there's no doubt that she's, probably the best player in the country. I'm sure there's some folks on the East Coast that would probably want to throw up an argument to that. But this is a USC team that is, in year 4 for Gottlieb being at USC. She's building the program now as she wants to see it. She was able to get Talia von Oelhoffen from Oregon State, who I don't think played this weekend. I think she's hurt, at least part of the weekend. But, but she's a veteran guard. She's a 4th-year guard. Yeah. And, somebody who she came in and played the COVID year as she graduated in December in high school. And then came in and played early and came early and played at Oregon State, but then got to have another year of eligibility to have a veteran guard in there. So Lindsay is working the system as it exists to her team's best advantage right now. You've got homegrown talent. You've got that great recruited talent. You might have brought in a couple of pieces to complement out of the transfer portal. And then you've got an exciting freshman, Kennedy Smith, who will, presumably be there for a while. Presumably. And, so you're putting all of that together in an interesting way.
I think it is. I think you're right. I think it's a masterclass of kind of utilizing all the pieces of the puzzle now that these coaches have to manage, and that you have to grow your own. I mean, I think the idea that I can just go and magically build a roster of all new people each and every year, that gets really hard because it's hard to create chemistry. It's hard to have people buy into a culture that are only there for 7 to 9 months, and I think maturity comes with that. Like, I would point to a player like Kiki Iriafen, that's an incredibly mature young woman who graduates with a degree from Stanford and says, I'm going to continue to expand myself academically. USC is a great option for me. That's where I'm going to land. P.S. They win 95-73 over Penn State yesterday. Juju has 35, and between the two of them combined, 25 of 32 from the field.
Sure.
That's the gift that just keeps on giving. You can't ask for anything better. But it also creates a buzz outside of when we take out what's happening right now within the scale of things in Los Angeles. But there's going to be a big spotlight focus on LA for the next couple months.
Yeah.
When it comes to women's basketball.
And that's what, I would say, Corey's been at UCLA, but this is what Lindsay came back to do, right? Is to bring USC women's basketball back. Yeah. And some of the ways you have to do that in a very tough sports market is to bring buzz. It was, Los Angeles was not a even with the sparks in town. Los Angeles was not a super supportive college women's basketball market. The
Right.
crowds weren't great. The Pac-12 tried to hold a tournament there for a while, and it just didn't draw anybody. Like that was a tough market. And all of a sudden, it's the hottest market in women's basketball, right? And so, but you need it's LA. You need star power.
Mhm.
And you get that with Juju, and you get that at UCLA with a player like Lauren Betts. Like you have to have star power to draw people in. Plus, it just makes your team better. So
Amen.
works
And
out works out nicely for everyone. But Lindsay's well suited, obviously, as I said earlier. Lindsay's well suited for this new world that we're in. She can run her program like a GM. She just has that brain. She has the mindset about it. She did tell me, it was the start of the season. I said, you've brought in so many new players year after year after year, where you're starting over, where every roster has 7, 8 brand new players. And they're not just they're people who are going to play. And she said, yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, I would be tired too, 100%. And going back to what we just said, you have to then you're always preaching certain things where in other entities or years ago, the culture, the chemistry was just there automatically. It kind of did itself organically, and kids in the locker room did it. You got to reteach that every time. And that would be a hard road to hoe, I think.
Well, and players have to learn how to play with each other, and they just don't have enough time. It's like, when you have players that have played together 2 or 3 years, where each other, it's the whole, we know where we're going to be on the floor. We know when the pass is coming. We know. You don't get those things. You get to build chemistry, and then you get to start over again. And for players, there's got to be a level of, I don't know if it's exhaustion, but certainly the players have to keep pivoting.
No, you're absolutely right. Okay, 2 dates for everybody to mark on your calendar. USC, UCLA, we're square off. At USC, February 13th, and then at UCLA, the last regular season game of the season on March 1st. Mark those on your calendars, friends. Okay, when we come back, Michelle, we got to go north, up where she is. We've got to talk about this surging Cal Bears team and check in on what's going on in Palo Alto. 2 teams, new league, new life in the ACC. Well, running a small business means you are wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone number can become your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, you get a complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer. It integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. If you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring that you never miss those opportunities. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA for $20 off 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Welcome back, everyone. Missy Heidrick and Michelle Smith is here joining me this morning. It is Monday, January 13th, and we've got Cal and Stanford that are going to match up on January 23rd, 10 days from now. But there is a lot going on in the northern part of California right now, and this Cal Bears team surging back in the top 25. They're 24 in the AP. I think they stay there this week. They've run off 3 in a row. They won at SMU. They beat number 21 NC State, and then they beat Florida State 82-78 over the weekend. Your thoughts on this Cal Bears team? They're living life good from the 3-point line, and it is working.
And good for Sharman Smith, because this is a program that had been through it during the COVID period of time in terms of being games canceled, unable to play, just injuries, where I know that Sharman was like, is this ever going to work? Yeah. And it's working. She's got 5 grad transfers. So when you talk about people who've worked the portal a little bit, Sharman's worked the portal. She's got 5 grad transfers. She's got Lulu Twydale from Australia, the sophomore, who can shoot the lights out. Iana Krimley, who was always a great shooter, international player. This is a team that is finally where, it's finally where Sharman Smith wants it to be. And, obviously they are headed toward the NCAA tournament. This is their best start in 12 years. Like, this is a Cal team. I am, as objectively as I can be, I'm really proud of Sharman. I've known Sharman a long time.
Yeah.
I covered her when she played at Stanford, obviously. And she's been at Cal, for a really long time. And this is the team that I knew she was capable of coaching. And so, they hit the three. They play with a ton of energy. And, right now they just believe.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that. I mean, they're winning, to come home and win a game against a team like NC State. Like, they're having to prove their bona fides now moving into this ACC schedule, that they didn't just have a great start because they didn't play that many people or, whatever it is. I actually think they probably should be ranked a little higher than 24 at this point. Yeah. But we'll see. And I'm really impressed by how they play. I watched them absolutely hammer Stanford a few weeks ago. So they're going to play again, obviously, on the 23rd. And that'll be another barometer for both teams. But that was the biggest win that a Cal team had over Stanford in 40 years. I mean, this is an opportunity for this Cal team. And they were picked 14th in the ACC. And they're sitting pretty in third, fourth place right now.
Well, I think they've done the things that you have to do, like, i.e. they go and win at SMU. You got to go steal some on the road, and then you're holding home court, as you said, a huge win against NC State, and then you beat Florida State. I mean, they start to rack up, and you're doing the things that put you in that upper tier now of a very good women's basketball league in the ACC. That's the recipe to success in any Power 4 league right now.
Yeah, and they've got some big games coming up.
Yeah.
And they've got some people that they're going to play that are going to be really good measuring sticks for them. But if they come out of those games, winning some of those games, looking great, or, even playing close to somebody like Notre Dame, this team, I think, is for real this season. I mean, it's an issue of sustenance with those 5 grad transfers, right? Like, so, what does Sharman Smith get from this that allows her to sustain the success of this program? But this year, in this first year in the ACC, again, and they're shooting threes consistently. And look, you can live by the 3 and you can die by the 3. And so far they're living by it.
Amen. And I don't mind that. Their next trip is going to be one where it takes them going east. They will be at Duke and at Wake Forest. Their travel partner, so to speak, is the Stanford Cardinal, which is having a bit more of a struggle in the ACC. They're 9-7, I believe, 1-4 right now in ACC play. They got their first ACC win over Florida State. That was an 89-84, but then they have an 81-67 loss to NC State. This is the first year. This is in a whole new era in Palo Alto. Very different look of everything that we've all known Stanford women's basketball to be for decades beyond decades under the leadership of Tara Vanderveer. Kate Pay takes over this program in the year of transition for everybody associated with Stanford. Your thoughts on what you've seen from the Cardinal and what the next few weeks maybe need to have happen to get themselves maybe back on track or feeling like they're in the right place.
So Stanford this was going to be a transition year based on, based on who they have, based on what, they brought in a couple of transfers, Tess Heel from Santa Clara. They brought in Mary Beth Stevenson. Yes. Okay. It's early here in California. But they don't have a big, they don't have the thing that Stanford, right? Like, what do we know about Stanford? The trees. Yeah. And they always have the trees down low. This team doesn't have that. Nuno Aguirre is a great player, but she's not big. She's not a down low on the block. She's got a wider range of skills than that, but they're missing that. And I think that that's sort of key to what they do. So they're running Princeton and they're running around, but they're also live by the 3, die by the 3. And they were hitting them at like an incredible pace at the start of the season. And then I think defenses changed what they were doing a little bit. And I think that they cooled off somewhat. And if they're not hitting threes as proficiently, they're not as successful. The other issue with Stanford is Talana Lapola, their veteran point guard, has been out. She's got a knee injury, and there's not a real timetable for her to come back. And while Lapola won't give you a ton of points, she is a smart distributor. She knows how to put people in positions to score. And so they're missing that too. So all of this isn't the easiest transition. I know that Kate Pay they've got number 3 recruiting class in the country coming in. They've got a couple of bigs coming in. Like maybe this year was always going to be difficult. This isn't necessarily a Tara thing. I don't think. I think this is what this roster looks like. This is who you've got. Again, their ability to play in the transfer portal is limited by the academic standards at Stanford. They're just now getting Stanford to loosen up on the idea of undergraduate transfers, which is not something Stanford's institutionally done a lot of. So this idea that you've got to shake loose admissions a little bit to create space to bring people in, but Stanford's going to have, as a program, as an institution, they're going to have a more difficult time with all of these shifts and these changes. They are only now really ramping up this NIL. Their collective, which sound, with all of the money in Silicon Valley and all of that, that sounds, but there really are, this just wasn't the way Stanford did business. Yep. And they are going to be slower to adjust institutionally. And that is going to show itself. And I think it's showing itself this year in terms of not losing a player like Kiki. And then, you're not going to get back what you lost. And they're just structured differently, but from a basketball perspective, they're being defended well. They don't hit threes as consistently. When they hit threes, they win. And when they don't hit threes as consistently, they struggle because they don't have something else inside. They don't have a dominant player inside like we've seen them have for a long time.
Well, and that's what you see in a lot of teams in the ACC is that they are going to have posts. And so that not only becomes an issue to be able to score, but also to defend. Yep. And I think with the very decisive win by Cal, the first time these two teams matched up, I have a feeling Stanford is circling January 23rd, and they know that that's a bit of a redemption matchup for them. They've got to be better when they play Cal out of their own back door. You're in your back door right there. This is our yard. We got to figure out who owns this space.
But let's just talk about very briefly. I just want to plant the seed that let's look at where we are in a couple of weeks. And are we talking about Stanford not making the NCAA tournament for the first time in 36 years?
Whew, that is one we will put a pin in, and we're going to have to come back and talk about that in another month because that would look really, really strange. Well, it has been a pleasure to start 2025 with my dear colleague here, Michelle Smith. Michelle, where does everybody find you, my friend, when you're not working your regular day job?
You find me at the Next. You find me at the Next Hoops, and so I am getting myself back into circulation in the women's basketball world after taking a little time off. There'll be a book coming in a few months, which we're excited about, and so the Next Hoops. That's where you find me.
Okay, awesome. Well, you'll find Michelle and all of my amazing colleagues there. Please go see us. Thank you. And we want everyone to continue to stay safe wherever you are out there in this crazy United States right now in early January. Just remember, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On NBA Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's Locked On Daily, and start your day with the all new free Locked On NBA newsletter. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week.